So I'm someone who has never read Dante's Inferno. Is there anyone out there who has actually read Dante's Inferno? Oh, look, there's a hand. Excellent. But like many of you, you may have heard of it, heard about it, may even know a little bit about what it's about. Um, it is the journey, the kind of vision journey that Dante makes through all the circles of hell as it is, part of his vision. And then eventually in the next book, he goes through purgatory and up through paradise, which is all good. But when he gets down to the very center, the very core of hell, which is where Satan is supposedly kept, this is the circle reserved for those who betray people. So those who are treacherous or betray trust. And of course, Satan, as the extreme example of that, is caught right in the center. And as he flaps his devilish wings, he makes everything freeze over. So, the center of hell, according to this vision, is frozen because there's something about betrayal which often hasn't got the passion of other sins. Sometimes it's cold and calculating. And something that intrigues me about morality, kind of popular morality today, is that a lot of the rules that have kind of been in place, particularly about relationships, for quite a while, are thrown out the window. But this idea that betrayal of trust is still an appalling thing, that is still there. So you can have as many partners as you like in sequence, but you can't have one and have another one secretly because you're betraying the trust of this first person. So it's still seen as something awful, as it is. And of course, the more someone should be worthy of trust, the more a betrayal hurts us, which means, as we know, in past years, as stories of betrayal of trust within our church have emerged, they've had layers of pain, layers of awfulness that exacerbated by the fact that there, within the church, at least, people should have been safe. Then this Genesis story, which continually amazes me with the number of insights into what it is to be human that it contains. You've got Satan, probably in the form of a snake, doing what Satan does best, winning Eve over to trust him and betraying that trust. And he does even more than that. He takes the one person that Eve can trust utterly, God, and slanders him. The word for devil, diabolus, basically means the slanderer. So what he does is destroy Eve's trust in God, suggests to Eve that God is lying to her, that God is holding back this really good thing from her, and that Satan is actually much more trustworthy. Of course, lack of trust leads immediately to hiding. It hadn't even occurred to Adam and Eve before then that they were naked because they didn't need any protection from each other. It hadn't occurred to them that they could be hurt. But as soon as the trust is undermined, suddenly they have to cover themselves up with clothes. And worse than that, they hide from God. I think, one of the saddest lines in the whole Bible is this line where God calls out, Adam, where are you? Where are you hiding? Because the whole story of the Old Testament from that point onwards is God searching for humanity. God trying to find ways to get us out from behind the bushes. God trying to find ways to reconnect, talking directly, talking through burning bushes, putting a tabernacle in the middle of the people where he could come and instruct them, speaking through kings, speaking through prophets. He tried time and again. And time and again, the relationship was destroyed because people failed to trust him, failed to trust that he truly did love them, failed to trust that the instructions and I suppose guidelines for living that God gave them were good. Until, naturally, we come to Jesus. And this is the background to the story of Jesus being tempted. Because here we have the devil, we have the slanderer, who is also called Satan, the tempter. And what is exactly the devil tempting Jesus with? He's tempting him by once again trying to undermine his trust in God. So remember, Jesus has just been baptized. And at the baptism, God the Father says to Jesus, "This is my beloved Son, in whom I am well pleased." Right? Jesus, you are the Son of God. So what does the devil do? He says, well, if you really are the Son of God, are you really? Are you really? Does God really love you? Why are you out here in the middle of the desert starving if God really loves you? Okay? Why aren't all the nations of the world bowing down before you if you really are the Son of God? Couldn't you do anything you like? Throw yourself off the temple if you really are the Son of God. Do you really trust? Fortunately for us, Jesus did. Fortunately for us, nothing that the devil could do shook Jesus's trust in who he was and in who God was, and in the quality and the depth and the unwavering nature of God's love for him and for us. The thing about trust is that it can't be forced. No one can force me or you to trust God. It has to be something that we give. And I think that is something of what it means when we say that we are saved by faith, because faith is just another word for trust. Faith isn't a great intellectual exercise. It's not taking our spiritual temperature. It's not being a wonderful, holy, faultless person. It's trusting God. It's trusting that God truly loves us and that God is searching for us much harder than we are searching for God. It's trusting that we, like Jesus, are God's beloved children. So how do we build that trust? How do we remind ourselves of it? How do we resist temptation? There's so many ways we can go about it, different for each of us. But I wanted to give you a really simple prayer that I have found helpful, particularly at the lowest moments, the moments where I'm tempted not to trust. It's a prayer that was written by Thomas Traherne back in the 1600s, and it's just 3 short phrases. Lord, have mercy. Thee I adore. Into thy hands. Lord, have mercy. Thee I adore. Into thy hands. Lord, have mercy, because despite all that God has done and continues to do, we are so easily led away by the alluring messages that lead us to doubt God and to doubt all that he wants us to be and do. Lord, have mercy. Thee I adore, because we so often forget to do that. We so often forget to remind ourselves of all that God has done for us, for the depth of God's love in coming in Jesus, the sheer wonder of that. Why would he? Why would he bother with us? The sheer wonder of Jesus. Why wouldn't we adore? And then into thy hands. This is the trust. This is the trust that comes after we have come to God in the vulnerability, asking for mercy. And we've come to God recognizing God's trustworthiness. Then we can say, into thy hands. The picture I always think of here is, a little kid throwing themselves off a veranda or, a little step into their parents or grandparents or aunt or uncle's arms, knowing without doubt they're going to be caught. Or the picture of someone carrying this hugely heavy load and someone else coming along and prizing their fingers off it and just lifting it up and taking it away. Or simply the loving trust of leaning into someone, letting their love surround us and support us. It is not that nothing's going to go wrong. When in Isaiah, God says, when you pass through the waters, I'll be with you. When you pass through the flames, you will not be burned. I will be with you. We are still going to pass through those waters. We're still going to pass through those flames. In Psalm 23, we still pass through the valley of the shadow of death. But faith in God means we know that God is with us every step of that way. We know that God in Jesus has passed through that valley of darkness already, knows the way, and is there with us as we do the same. Faith, resisting the devil, is simply trusting in that steadfast love of God. Lord, have mercy. Thee I adore. Into thy hands. Amen.